Welcome everyone. Welcome. Shimoge here. Welcome to Euphoria. Yeah. It's the first time I've used this exact angle, or I've shot the live stream on this exact angle. Currently 4:46 a.m. It went from 4:45 to 4:46 just as I looked. That's good luck. Anyway, I'll just cut right to the chase here. Again, quick greeting. Given name Shimoge, government name Shimoge Chijoke Ibenwoku. I'm currently in Atlanta, Georgia. Yes, that's where I live. Yes, that's where I'm sitting. Born in Washington, D.C. Should be called something else. What should it be called according to Prayer Ram? Abruneme My matrilineal village is Bemo Hafia. Patrilineal village patrilineal reference point village is Alji Urata. Okay, 2 facts about me. 1. My favorite color is blue, and I want to call it something else, but I think that's the truth. My favorite color is blue. That doesn't mean I like looking at it all the time. It's my favorite color. 2, I like the color orange a lot. Now, ebere, orange, same thing. Let's get into it. Kaini albuna jide ebere. I'm really contemplating Dr. Umar Johnson's school project. It is what is known as outer limits stuff. 1, because of the discourse around it. I'm just gonna cut right to the chase. I've been very critical of my elders in the past, but I must be specific. When I just say my elders quickly, I'm talking about the ones in my family. And if I put a qualifier like my bad elders, specifically I'm talking about the ones that are bad. If you're not a bad elder, I'm not talking about you. Okay, put a pin in that. Right now, though, I'm just going to be very liberal with my language. My elders, as in everyone who is way older than me, and I'll say it like that. Say you were in high school at least when I was born, or something like that. Have not done well. Because most of the people talk about Dr. Umar Johnson consistently, and I'll really say it on video, are older than me. I'm 28 years old. Okay, and we have to get better technology, so I don't have to always look at my clock winding up and down, because that's what goes on if you're always looking at it. I wasn't done previous to the arrival of colonizers. Anyway, let me just be very liberal with my language here. So these individuals, and I want to say I'm really talking about the men, because most of the women I've seen talk about Dr. Umar Johnson have not really gone into great depth about the school. They've focused on other things. And that's not necessarily bad, okay? I've registered 16 viewers. Thank you very much. But the men have really honed in on him being a fraud, I've seen. And they specifically honed in on the school. But they've managed to talk about it a lot and not say very much. Now, if you have more than a decade on me, I'll be honest, why am I eclipsing you in the depth of my commentary? And yes, there'll be certainly be some men who've said way more than me. I'm just talking about the spread I've seen. Cause all I've seen is people say, "Oh, it's a fraud." Then they watch his video, give it more views, and say, "Ah, see, And look, if you're talking in code, that's not good enough. Let me move." You see, and I'll use this phrase. I don't use it lightly, but I'll use this phrase. There's a lot of toxic masculinity in the world today, and I'll just let you in on the fact. Certain words that people don't like but get famous correlate to evil entities. Toxic masculinity is another name for the devil. Let's talk about the devil. And actually there are two devils. You see, I put up a writing, I'll just call it that, in the past, a couple months ago, naming the worst malevolent entities in existence, at least some of them. There was one I talked about that you can also refer to as the manosphere. That thing can also be called the devil. And I'll just leave it at that. But there's a second devil, and that's, I guess, most of the more common one. The devil is one of these Onyeka. He has five cycles, and they're complicated. The first cycle is where you can call him the devil. You can also call him Satan. The second one, you can call him the clown. Apparently, in my language, you call it Vaba. You can also call it the Joan, as in he is a Joan. His life is a Joan. You can just Joan on him, because he's that evil, and it's not funny. The third one is God. Yes, God is the same as the devil. Funny they come up together all the time. And yes, Jesus is another version of God, and so is Christ. Let me move. Okay, so God, and because God is thought to be positive, I have to make two comments. One, the word God itself is cool, but that's not necessarily cool. What is cool? Cool is a thing. That's the second best man. Yes, a thing can be a man. There are men within it. The leader is cool. Cool is that which draws attention and demands a positive response. But an evil thing can draw your attention and demand a positive response. For example, an elite athlete who scores a lot of goals but then gets sick later. He drew your attention, he demanded a positive response. Wow, he scored, but overall was bad because he strained himself and got sick. Not good. Anyway, that's a form of Aurala is a evil cool, an evil leader. You see what I'm saying? Anyway, now, and I'll leave it at that. Anyway, um, now, so the word God itself is cool, even though the ugh, I'm still studying this, but basically, Um, most gods are not good. So the word God is actually kind of a foul term. It's weird, but our category of life can be referred to as God. Like, it's complicated. A foul term can be used to refer to something that is good. Why? Because terms are just meant to make you understand an aspect of something. No thing is perfect. Everything has a foul aspect, at least from some perspective. It's a reflection. Lord have mercy. Anyway, forgive me. I thought I saw something out there. Anyway, so that's one. Two. If you really think about it, the concept of God is obviously evil, and I'm talking about the God concept. And side note, the whole point of the Onyeka God is he doesn't actually live up to the concept, but he projects the image he does. But why is the concept obviously evil? How can someone, one, control everything by themselves? Side note, the God of Thunder does not control most things. That is not possible. He simply has a lot of clout, and that is in its entirety. It is not possible. There are 48 other things, and there should be 49. Not possible. And these things all mix together. So the God of Thunder is not God. Okay. But how can someone control everything by themselves? It's often said God is a tyrant. That's literally the idea. In fact, my ancestors are telling me tyrant it literally means God. Doesn't that make sense? Just think about it. Then this is a person who has no connection to anyone. And then also implicitly, and I want to be polite here, implicitly engages in abusive relationships with people, because if everyone is your underling, how can you relate to them at all? And I'll just leave it at that. That is a foul concept. But we've so embraced the idea that God is a good thing that we forget basic things. And it all mixes together. And I'll just leave it at that because it's confounding. So, anyway, God is not good. Please grow up, be collective, and pray to good entities. And more than that, don't be obsessed with praying to entities. Just call in your relatives, as in people in your keji and beyond. And yes, most of them will be spirits. And then pray to help you do something. Do not just wake up, and I'll use it in Onyeka. I valorize it a lot because I don't do this, but I'm just gonna show you my mentality. Do not go, "Hi Neptune, can you please give me money?" Okay, so anyway, also eat. Please eat. Eat and interact with people who are pleasant to interact with. Anyway, fourth form of the devil. This one is hard to talk about because the terminology is very foul. Apparently, my language is called Vobu. You can also call him, and I say this with delicacy, the sellout. And the idea behind him is that he has left himself behind. You can also call him Efulefu. There's another Onyeka that's not bad. You can also call Efulefu. Apparently, there's a duality to that idea. But you know the bad idea of being a sellout. You have left your people behind. unjustly, and you've left yourself behind. So that's him. Um, and I just have to be transparent here. It's hard to talk about, but there's a certain type of elaboru, as in there's a certain type of racist imagery in which one negatively depicts um, an outside group using themselves. That concept is him, and if you've had to study that phenomenon and or have accidentally seen it because the images are floating around, the energy around is very unpleasant. I'll just say that is the pure energy of the devil, and that's what it is. We really have to not always be secular and sometimes say that certain things that manifest that resonate in a negative way come from a very negative spiritual wellspring. I'll leave it at that. That is actually the one I find the most unpleasant, and I'll leave it at that. Now, the fifth form of the devil is toxic masculinity. You could also call him Beelzebub, and yes, emo, IMO. I've talked about that before. Let me not dwell on it. One other version of toxic masculinity that I want to mention is Mwele Nkele, the savage cry, the savage cry of savagery, or the cry of the deer. You can also call this Onyechefu, a person to forget. The idea behind this is an unpleasant sound from an unpleasant person manifests as a person itself, and that is also a metaphor for someone who committed some of the gravest evil acts in life and did not repent before their time passed on. And I'll leave it at that. Very unpleasant. Anyway, why am I getting into all of this? There's a lot of toxic masculinity in society, and toxic masculinity tends to glorify himself in two ways. One, by saying that he is the biggest and baddest there is in a negative way. Because if you over talk about a criminal, you're talking about their power and you're glorifying them. So if you say, hey, I'm a big bad criminal, you glorify yourself. Now, if you have, um, let me say it like this. Toxic masculinity is an expansion person, right? Now let's think about it on the level of people like us, like you and me, who can only exist in one place at once, right? If you identify very strongly with toxic masculinity and you see it in other people, you might say, who? You might say, here, there I am. Let me glorify that by saying it's bad. So that's one thing. The next element of toxic masculinity I want to highlight is just attacking people and wanting to oppress them. These elements are both present in the discourse among men about Dr. Umar Johnson, because a lot of them are not very different than him. Yeah, a lot of them are not very different than him, and I think I'll just leave it at that. So, what am I getting at here? It's been very hard for me to parse through the discourse, and to an extent that it's very hard for me to see before I speak. And that's why this is a good exercise for me. You see, this is my job, but it's also a personal exercise. They get to dovetail because it helps me to think. So, what am I doing here? I'm trying to refine my critique of Dr. Umar Johnson's school project. Yesterday, um, um, I outlined a critique of his school project as well as school in general. I'm satisfied with my critique of school in general, especially the improvements upon school. Obviously, the overall system must change, but these intermediate measures are not bad. Let me read them again. Um, so, with school in general, here are the problems and here are the solutions. Again, I did this yesterday. The problems are in blue, the solutions are in black. And then one more word on what I was saying about the devil. Obviously, that's very unpleasant. Forgive me if that was unpleasant for anyone to hear, but I am talking about that for a practical purpose, and I'm just trying to get worldly here. Um, all of those archetypes I brought up, um, unfortunately, you see many people, especially men, prevalent in society today who embody them. So I think if we think about those archetypes, it can be helpful in getting rid of evil in this world. I'll leave it at that. It's unpleasant, but sometimes it has to be done. Anyway, um, so first problem with school is that it overworks kids. My solution is to make class attendance optional, even though attendance on the school premises should be mandatory. The second main problem with school, and let me actually get up. The second main problem with school is that it's too sedentary. There's too much seating for both teachers and students. The solution is to allow children to move freely during classes and implicitly teachers as well. Three, school, quite frankly, deprives kids of sunlight. Why? Because they're inside all the time, and the way school buildings are designed tends to deprive them of sunlight. That one big window is not really enough, and a lot of classrooms might not even have the one big window. What's my solution? Every other class at least has to be outside, and you can have tarps and things. And if there's inclement weather, either as a backup protocol, you go inside, or maybe school's off that day. Then, the fourth main problem with school is that it devalues kids by telling them that they're bad. This manifests most especially in failing people from classes and holding them back and kicking them out of school. This shouldn't happen. My solution is that every child should graduate. You should just note what their grades are, and then people in society who want to judge them can look at that for their own purposes. For example, a straight A student and a straight F student can both graduate. It's just if employers are looking at their record, they might choose to hire the straight A student and not hire the straight F student. And that's just an example. I know that's crude and fast, but I just want you to get it. Again, grades are not everything. The straight F student might be very talented in something, just didn't do well in school for whatever reason. Anyway, but the point is, the school itself does not have to devalue them. I mean, at least to the obviously, if you don't succeed at something, there's a degree of devaluing, but it's not the same as if they literally kick you out of school. Forgive me, let me move. Ooh, all right, let me just turn this thing around. Uh, somebody hurt, hey, ha, ha, ha. Somebody hurt you, but not by himself. Okay, forgive me. I just had to take a walk. Ugh. Yeah, there's gonna be a story time after this. I don't think I'm gonna do all the writing I anticipated. Anyway, I give those four criteria. I came up with some for Umar's school, but it strikes me that there's too much crossover, so I kind of have to redo Umar's. Because let's look at the ones for Dr. Umar's school. I also want to be clear. When I call him Umar, I'm not doing it out of disrespect. That's just his name. I just want to be clear. If you received a PhD, that is an accomplishment. Again, I'm not. I want to be careful here. I'm not proponent of the idea that um, only people with PhDs, because again, I don't have one. Speak. Let me just say it. If you graduate from Harvard, that's a big degree. Um, I don't know what the studies say about how it registers, but that's a bigger than average degree. Um, I'll just leave it at that. So yeah, I know like a Harvard graduate standing here and um, talk about PhDs is kind of ironic. I'll just leave it at that. But uh, I'm just getting that out of the way. At the same time, I don't have a PhD. Um, so I'm not a proponent of the idea that, forgive me, only people with PhDs are intelligent or only people with PhDs are at the top of the intellectual ladder, um, even though that is an accomplishment. And I think we need to change how we think about people's qualifications and certifications. At the same time, in line with the second point I've made, um, just because you got a PhD and there's a societal practice of putting a doctor before your name if you attained a PhD, that doesn't mean that that's your name metaphysically. It's just not your given name. Calling someone their given name is never inherently disrespectful, and I'll leave it at that. Anyway, um, that's the stuff for Dr. Umar's school. Um, where's the overlap? The sedentary one. Just looking at this. Okay, the unique, but then this is the weird thing. Anyway, it's just the sedentary thing is an overlap, and then uh, I guess that's the only one I need to change. But it just feels weird though because what are other problems with Umar's school? Okay, I see all of the classic problems with school in Dr. Umar's school, like those four ones. So that calls the project into question. On top of that, it's an all boys school, and weirdly, it's an all boys school that does not have a. I'm just gonna say it based on its timeline. When it opens, it won't have a sister school. Let me walk. Okay, I'll just say it. I'm just ending this anger. I've reached my goal. I just have to redo the Umar problems thing, just because the all boys thing that really. I mean, just what? Anyway, goodbye. See you.